Let us look at this area where Tinubu government have hit the North hard. Of course, talking about state creation. Delta North in Delta State, which is ANIOMA, that is already getting attention of all the almost all the senators in the country. A situation where about 79 senators already endorse it. And the man leading this crusade has to be Benjamin Carlo, of course, the Deputy Speaker of House of Representatives. We understand that before now, it's only the southeastern part of the country that is having 5 states, as against the 6 states in the other geographical zones. And this seeks to correct the anomaly. And of course, this is part of the reason the North may not be comfortable with the Tinubu administration. Remember that anything that seeks to tinker with the status quo, the North is always allergic to it. Of course, the North is allergic to change when it comes to Nigerian status quo, because they are the greatest beneficiary of the current status quo. And of course, if you look at the current status quo as we speak, it was not anything done through fairness, equity, and justice. It was imposed on Nigerians by the military. Even the very grand non, the constitution was imposed on Nigerians. Even as they not say they are not interested in the Tinubu's government, I know that the government has brought hardship in area of inability of people to get their welfare actually done in the right manner. But is the North actually interested in giving another Southerner the position? That's the question. Because even as we speak, the ADC, where Obi have been co-opted into the coalition, it's becoming clear that the North only needed Obi and his supporters to be on board for the purpose of Atiku leveraging on that Obi's popularity to access Aso Rock. Because even as we speak, the coalition already dragged Obi to enter into an agreement that he will eventually sign an agreement with the stakeholders to be committed to whoever emerged from the primary that will be subsequently conducted by that party. So it goes to show that these people already know that at the nick of time, and Obi may not fly their flag, and that if Atiku eventually become the flag bearer, if Obi have already consented to honoring whoever comes out of the process, of course, they will now remind him that you are meant to honor your agreement. But again, let us even question the North. What do they really bring to the table? Because I remember that in the past, before Jonathan had issue with the North, it was when he tinkered with the idea of the foundation of Nigeria, talking about confab. Before then, Jonathan was in good terms with the North. Jonathan was not having issues with the North. Of course, we remember how Jonathan was building animal schools in the North, trying to educate the downtrodden, who hitherto before then had the opportunity of going to school, who, of course, were neglected by the region and their leaders. But the moment he tinkered with the idea of confab, he got problem with the North, because the North is always allergic to change. And of course, if you even look at what do they bring to the table, well, I remember that when agriculture was the mainstay of Nigerian economy, it was very clear that if whatever your state brings, you take 50% of it. 30% goes to the federal government, and the other 20% go to other areas. But now that crude is the mainstay of the economy, the reverse has become the case. And it is equally the military that changed the trend under Northern leadership. A situation where it took some concerted effort of years to even raise the derivative to 13%. Because I remember in the past that it was about 7% or so. But again, I think this issue of state creation tinkers with the very foundation of Nigeria, because for the first time, the southeastern part of the country will have opportunity of getting 6 states, just like any other geopolitical zone. And the way it is, we understand that 79 senators already endorsed this proposal, meaning the North may not be comfortable with the current administration. But however I look at it, I think it's the way to go. Because even when the federal government, under this current administration, sought to do tax reform, when the government raised tax reform bills, the North vehemently stood against it. Why? because the Town Reform Bill sought to tinker with the foundation of Nigeria, the sharing formula of resources. And again, they say no, because normally the Reform Bill sought to correct was areas in terms of derivation, in terms of consumption, that those that consume more, those that derive should get more. Of course, we saw the North vehemently opposing it. And today, the bill have been watered down. And the watered down version is what the National Assembly passed into law. So you got to show that anything that seek to address the anomaly, the North will always resist it. Let us not even forget that even when it comes to quota system, it was equally the North that introduced quota system in Nigeria, both in the ministries and agencies of government, both in the education sector, because at the time, they saw that it was difficult for the North to compete with the South. So the best they could do to slow down the South or to be at equal par with the South in terms of getting appointments, getting positions in the government, was to introduce quota system. If not for the proliferation of private schools, the North would have succeeded in deterring or rather slowing down the pace at which certain states get graduates out of the school. So I think it is very clear, because if you look at the current state arrangement, where the North is having 19 states, the South is having 17 states, it is not anything done in fairness, equity, and justice. It was forced on Nigerians by the military. And if you go to the preamble of that constitution, it says that we, the people of Nigeria, have agreed to come together for the purpose of writing the constitution. Because the one that how point in time in the history of Nigeria, the Nigerians come together for the purpose of writing that constitution. So you go to show that, one, at this point, I think it is pertinent, paramount, that we return the country to old regional system. At the best, if that is not achievable, let us restructure to the point where we decentralize the police and make sure that the system work. Because if you look at what the problem we are facing currently as a people, you agree with me that even Aburi Accord already solved this problem. Because the issue of state police was already contained in the Aburi Accord. The issue of decentralization of the military was already contained in the Aburi Accord. It's just unfortunate that when they came back from Aburi, Gowon government then denied everything, and we are now back. And up to today, problem that would have solved even before the Civil War is now still plaguing us, confronting us. So as a people, we must think out of the box. Because the way it is, even the very solid mineral that is in the North, because we understand that gold and some other solid mineral is in the North, but the question is, how much are they bringing to the table of Nigeria? All we see is locals collaborating with some foreign partners and mining those solid minerals. But if you do that in the Niger Delta, the next thing you see is tanks of military everywhere. And the next thing you hear is illegal refinery. But why is the government not using the same energy in fighting illegal refineries in Niger Delta to fight illegal miners in other parts of the country? So the North must not forget that in Nigeria, there's a tacit agreement, or unwritten agreement, that says that if not rule for 8 years, the South will rule for 8 years. Understand that that is the basis for which, after an Obasanjo finished 8 years, after 1999 to 2003, 2007, he actually handed over to Yar'Adua, who of course is from Katsina State in the North. Of course, after, though Yar'Adua could not finish because of death, we understand that Jonathan took over. After Jonathan, he went back to the North. Buhari governed for another 8 years. He came back to the South. Tinubu is in the saddle. 2 years and some months into his first tenure, the North is already clamoring to take the power back. And I'm not saying anybody like Atiku, El-Rufai, Kwankwaso, I'm not saying they are not eligible to contest election, but there's a tacit agreement, unwritten agreement, and understanding that says if you rule for 8 years in the North, the South have to govern for another 8 years. And the way it is, if the energy put into the coalition is very clear that the coalition is saying we are zoning this presidency to the South to enable the South complete their own 8 years, I think it will be understandable. But the situation where all we see is gimmick, ruse, trying to make it look as if Obi is who they want to give. But I think it is now becoming very clear, pretty clear, that Atiku is the one already planned to have the ticket. Don't forget that even before now, and Atiku himself have made it very clear, where he come out to say that if he become the president, that is going to give women and youth 70% attention. And even the former governor of Jigawa State, talking about Sule Lamido, have equally made it clear that he will support Obi if Obi win the primary. And shortly after all of this, we have seen an understanding that came from Amechi, the former governor of Rivers State, where he made it very clear that all the stakeholders in the ADC have agreed to sign an agreement to support whoever emerge from the primary or the party that will be subsequently conducted in the coming months or year, as the case may be. But the way it is, I think the North must realize that this country belongs to everyone. As long as Nigeria still remain one entity, nobody should have that entitlement mentality that currently exists in the North. A situation where if they're out of power, all their nerves will not be settled, all their intention, all their strategy is how to return to power. If you even look at the way and manner they came together to oust a Jonathan out of office. Even the very article himself left PDP for APC to fight against Jonathan. Even the former governor the former governor of Kaduna State equally joined him in that crusade. For the first time in Nigeria history, we have seen a quest to question Nigerian foundation. Of course, this time around, it has to do with tinkering with the state creation. We equally understand that the person who is driving this force in the National Assembly is Benjamin Kalu, the Deputy Speaker of House of Representatives from Abia State. Though it stands, about 79 senators already endorsed ANIOMA state, which is seeking to be created and be added to the southeastern part of the country to make the southeast six states, just like any other geopolitical zones in the country. And again, I don't think the North will be comfortable with this, because we remember that the other time the government of Tinubu came up with the idea of tariff reform bills. Of course, it faced stiff resistance from power brokers in the North. Even a governor of Borno State, who of course is supposed to be a close ally of the president, was very vocal against it. But this time around, the issue of constitutional review have taken the center stage. Of course, this time around, is seeking to right the wrong of imbalance in terms of giving Southeast 6 geopolitical zones, because we understand that the Delta North and Delta State are Igbo-speaking parts that have been taken away from their brothers in the southeastern part of the country. And again, I don't know why the North is always allergic to change, because we have seen it in so many areas. And you come to think of it, what do the North actually bring to the table? Talking about Nigerian table, almost everything is from the South. Remember that even when we had the era of agriculture, when agriculture was the mainstay of Nigerian economy, the revenue sharing formula was 50% for the area where the product is taken from. Of course, 30% was for the federal government, and the other 20% go to other areas. But again, now, even the very crude that is the mainstay of Nigerian economy currently, the only advantage the area that produces have is just 13% derivative. And even remember that a Jonathan government was in a very good relationship with the North all through, even while he was building an emergency school here and there, trying to make sure that he educated the North. The time he had problem with the North is when he tried to tinker with the foundation of Nigeria. That is confab. Of course, that didn't go down well with some stakeholders in the North who felt that it is an undue advantage to the North. And that was even why Jonathan was forced to start saying that the unity of Nigeria is not negotiable at the time they were going for that confab. And of course, we have even seen, even in Nigeria, during the time when it was competence, intelligence, someone needed to use to acquire position, gain admission to schools, how did not introduce quota system in almost every area of life, and that have even promoted mediocrity above meritocracy. If not for the even proliferation of private universities, that was like a system of the North asking the South to wait for them. But again, looking at this issue of state creation, for me, I think the North is going to fight back, because I understand that anything that seeks to tamper with the status quo that gives them advantage over the South, they are not always comfortable with it, because currently the North is having about 19 states as against 17 in the South. And this was done through military government. Nobody was consulted. Nobody came together to say this is how we want to apportion or rather divide the country into states and all of that. But again, the way it is now. So I think at this point, it's good we return the country to old regional system, or at best, let us have a proper restructuring. Particularly because to fight this issue of banditry that is occasioned by essence of Fulani headers and Fulani militias is a very big problem for the country. So if we go back to regional government, a situation where regions were empowered to have their own security architecture to deal with all these security issues, I think it will go a long way in saving lives and property. Because I don't think the government, talking about Nigerian democracy, will allow for secession. But the least we can settle for is restructuring, or at best, let us go back to our old regional system of governance. The way it is, the North have already skewed, everything is skewed in favor of the North currently. And the only way you can do this to favor everybody is to say, let us redefine how we want to be together. Even the current system that seeks to keep Obi in ADC, I think it's becoming clear that Obi is being hoodwinked into that coalition just to get the support of his followers for the purpose of perhaps making Atiku to get the presidency. Because as it stands, the ADC stakeholders have already come out to say they are going to sign an agreement, and that Obi have already agreed to sign an agreement just for the purpose of that coalition, for him to be committed to accepting anybody that comes out of the primary of that party for the purpose of the presidential candidate in the coming election of 2027. And as it is, when the North is saying they are tired of Tinubu's government, and I quite agree that there are so many areas of suffering in Nigeria currently under Tinubu's administration, but their interest is not because of a Tinubu. Because if you say you are tired of Tinubu government, it would have been necessary to say, okay, Obi is an alternative, give it to Obi. But their intention and interest is not for Obi. Their intention is to even drag Obi into that coalition for the purpose of using Obi to achieve their ultimate aim, which is to galvanize support for opposition in the name of we are tired of this government, suffering is there, inflation and all that. At the end of the day, Obi will come on board, his supporters will come on board, and Atiku will now leverage on it to access Aso Rock.